Okay, thank you. And we will now get ready to introduce Derek's mom, Sallie Marshall. Her topic is Into the Light and Back. Sallie had an near-death experience long ago and will share what led to her near-death experience, what happened during it, and the various lasting effects of the experience, including subsequent visits from the angels. Some background on Sallie. She had been a social worker with adults and children with mental disabilities and behavior problems, and an arts and crafts teacher with elementary age students. She is a creative artist who draws and paints, and a lot of her paintings are painted to promote calm and peace, often depicted in gardens, flowers, and images of Buddha. She wrote and self-published a children's book about 10 years ago and just finished a fictional story revolving around a spiritual community and is hoping to get it copywritten in the near future. She feels it is important to share her story to give people hope. I'm looking forward to hearing her story. So please help me give a warm Circle Miracles welcome to Sallie Marshall. So, it's really hard to do this. I did do this once at Pebble Hill before, and I pretty much knew everybody there. I know a few faces are familiar. And what makes this hard is two elements about this. One is talking about what led to the near-death experience, and also people over the years. I've told this story a lot, to different people for various reasons. It would come up in conversation, and what was hard is when people questioned it or dismissed it or completely flat out didn't believe my story at all. So I've told this story to a lot of different people from a lot of different faiths and religions, and just so you know that my purpose for telling the story is because it's really for anybody who has lost a loved one and is questioning what happens after you die, and it's also for anybody who's contemplating ending their lives, because that's part of how this all happened. So I'll start by talking about my childhood. My son has described it as, that's why this is hard, is I had a really bad childhood with a lot of trauma. Beginning with, my father was an alcoholic, and my mother was just like this very sweet, a lot of people described her as like a saint, and so she was the target of his whatever, alcoholics often have a target, and then there's scapegoats in the family. Everybody has like a delineated role in the family. The enabler. My mother was also an enabler. So I was the last child of 3 girls, and none of us was wanted. My father wanted boys, and he always made it clear to us. So from the get-up, I knew that I was not, he treated us like boys. So I thought of myself as a boy, not as a girl. I was treated as a boy and spoke of, like, he would say men were going out, things like that. He was in denial of what we were. So my middle sister had cystic fibrosis. She was sick all the time. She was the middle sister, and she was like a second mother to me. So I was really, really close to her, and she loved me. Like she loved dolls. She collected dolls, and so I was like a living doll for her. And anytime she was gone, I'd be like, I would follow her everywhere. And she was unusual in that she was exceptionally smart. She was exceptionally talented and unbelievably funny and like wild, just crazy wild. People would describe us as feral children because my mother, I guess she was severely depressed, and we were just left to our own devices. So we were just allowed to do whatever we wanted, but we had to be home at 5, of course. So what happened was, at age 7, my other favorite person was my grandfather. He died, and that was traumatizing, but we managed to get through that. And then when I was 9, the sister that I was very close to, the one that very much attended to me, she was hit by a car and was in a coma for some length of time, and then she passed away. Which obviously with anybody, if I say this, they're just like stunned and just, they don't even know what to say to me. It was beyond devastating. There's just no doubt, that this devastated all of us, which I think escalated my father's drinking. So my father moved our family right across the river. I grew up in central Pennsylvania. We moved to what is called Mechanicsburg, but it's so rural, it's it was, our address said RD number 3, rural delivery number 3. We were so far out in the middle of nowhere. That was in the summer of 1972, and I would have been 11 years old. I was raised Catholic and, never had a real problem with it. I did not like the school that the nuns were also. So I go from the abusive home to the nuns, which was not fun. And so when we moved to Mechanicsburg, I went to a new Catholic school. I was taking art lessons, which probably saved my life. Like people ask, like my therapist would say, how are you not in jail, dead, whatever. And it's because of art classes that I was given art classes always. Then again, so I went through another trauma again. I think that as a kid, because of all that previous trauma, I had no respect for my own life. So I was behaving in a way that was completely wild. Like I didn't care if I died. So people I chose friends that were, unhealthy, and I would do crazy things. In this incident that I'm going to say, was not, intentional. This was an accident. I was sledding with friends. It was a winter night, and coincidentally, I think it was in February. And I was 11 years old, and we had just moved, and I had these friends that also happened to be Catholic and went to my school. And I slid down the hill, and I was headed towards a tree, and I wiped out. I knew that it was either my head or my stomach, and I just thought, well, my stomach will handle this. So I fishtailed and hit the tree so hard that I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I split my lungs with my ribs. That's what in my mind I thought. I couldn't understand why I couldn't breathe. And nobody believed me. They're like, she's fine. She just knocked the wind out of her. So it took them a long time before I refused to move. I was just laying in the snow. They finally loaded me up onto a sled and carried me all the way up the hill. A bunch of men came down and took me, put me in my parents' car, and drove me to the hospital. And the hospital didn't know. They knew there was something wrong. They didn't know what. They didn't have the equipment. Just put me in an ambulance and moved me to the other hospital. And they realized that I think they cut me open to see what was wrong. And when they did, they found out that he cut me from here to here to find out what had happened to me. And it turns out that if I'm running over time to get to the point of the story. So he did this in order to see what damage was done, because he didn't know. Meanwhile, I'm losing blood and a lot. And he realized that my kidney was completely destroyed, so he removed it. And I didn't, I was under, they put me to sleep, and then I didn't know that was what I woke up and I was laying there. My mom was talking to the family next to us. Curtains were open, and I'm laying there. And she said, yeah, she had her kidney removed. And I'm like, what? And she says, you didn't know? And I'm like, no, I didn't know. She said, pull up your shirt and look. And so I did, and there was this huge bandage. And so that had I don't know if I had a near-death experience then, because during the operation my lung collapsed. So are you doing this because I'm running out of time?
No, saying you're going too much, too much information.
Too much information, okay. Yeah, he'll keep me on target. So these are all major traumas in my life, and I continued on, living my life. I recuperated, and let's see where I went from Catholic school to public school, and then I went. Finally, my last 3 years were in a public school, a private school. Sorry, And I was exposed to a lot of different religions, and I took a comparative religious class, and I learned about, all the religions of the world, and I was very interested in all that. I was always very open-minded, and my parents were, open, they didn't want me to change religions, but they never had a problem with me knowing or learning about it. In 1979, I started college in Philadelphia. I went to the College of Art, and then it was the University of Arts. So that was 1979. And the first year, I was in the dormitories, and I had a boyfriend who was immediately introduced to from a friend from home, and he went to the Academy of Arts. And so I was with him that first year, and during that time, he was kind of obsessed with me and controlling me, and like part of the control was, I don't really want to go into that. What it was food, and he was just always like, stuffing me with food and taking me out to dinner, and I gained a ton of weight. So then I broke up with him, and I moved into my own apartment, and I became anorexic. I just stopped eating, and I was just basically living on coffee and cookies. And I dropped like so much weight. I was just a stick figure. So this is what set me up for what happened for my near-death experience. I lost so much weight that I was really weak. And, you saw the pictures. I was like a stick, like you see what anorexics look like. I was not normal by any stretch of the imagination. And I took an allergy pill, and I've always been somebody who can't take pills. And I accidentally took a second one, which I could feel my heart just slowly beating slower and slower. And I just lay down on the bed. And since I at that point, I was still, because of my sister and because of everything that happened, I was pretty depressed. And I asked God, please just let me go, let me die. And so I did. The first thing I saw was like this light, and I kept like seeing this light, and I just faded out, and I'm laying on bed, and I slowly separated from my body. It was a strange sensation of like, like a yolk separating from an egg, or it was almost physical. So I separated from my body, and I was hovering over it, and then I just kept going up until I was bouncing around on the ceiling, and I didn't like it up there. So, I was just like, what do I do? I'm up here floating. And my thought was, I wanted to flip, so I did, and I could see my lifeless body on my bed. And then I was like, I felt sorry for me, being there dead. And I immediately wanted to go out the window. And my window faced Broad Street of Philly. It was like right, the Atlantic building would have been there. I went right out the window, and the Academy of Music would have been there. And the first thing I noticed was these blue spheres of light, these beautiful blue over some of the doorways. And I thought, what is that? I didn't notice that before. And I'm just floating around. And I floated all the way down Broad Street to what would have been South Philadelphia area. And my sister appeared in front of me. Now this is like incredible to see her. It would be like the same thing as if anybody in this room came across somebody who had died, and that would have been like almost 10 years to that point, being stunned to see this person that I love so much. And it was like this happy reunion. And I could see like the details that I had forgotten of her face. It was really strange. And she was also age progressed to the age that she would have been. So she was 10 years older from when she had passed away. And it was just like seeing anybody that you really, really love, and this incredible feeling of, oh my God, it's you. And after that, I don't know if she will see it's so long ago that I don't remember all the details. I just know that there was this tunnel, like that looks like a tunnel of clouds. And I don't know if she went first or we both went at the same time, but I went up in that tunnel and I just kept going. And when I got to what would be considered heaven, I became part of the light. And the sensation is like nothing I'll ever say will justify or do justice to what was there. And that's another reason why it's hard to talk about this, because there's no describing it in language. It was just too overwhelming, but the feeling of love was what was the strongest element. Just kind of a funny coincidence that that's what Derek chose to talk about, because the feeling was, it's like love that is indescribable. It's so extreme that it could melt metal. It's just so overwhelming, overpowering. You have no choice but just to come to this feeling, and you know that you're part of God, and you know that that's what God is. When this happens, it's just incredible. And at some point, I saw heaven, and what I saw was nothing like here in its perfection. Like everything was almost too perfectly beautiful. Like it's not like the imperfections of bugs and decay that you see here. It's just incredibly perfect and beautiful. And at another point, I did have a life review, which is what's also strange in that time seemed to be collapsed in that point where everything, you could see everything that happened, but it's like somebody punched a recorder and put it on high speed, and you could see, and you knew it was your life, and you're almost like outside of it. But what I was experiencing was how other people, like in my worst moments, how other people felt in response to what I had done, you know, stuff like that. Like you feel it from other at the same time. It was a strange thing that happened. And the other thing is that I was seeing structures there that were like what would look like crystal. They were made out of clear buildings, made out of like glass, almost like, and they reflected light, and they were just beautiful. And there were people there, and everybody was dressed in robes. And they did have human characteristics. And during that time, the most amazing part was when I saw Jesus Christ. A lot of people say, you know, you saw him because you expected to see him. But when I did die, I was very much on the fence about, you know, religion. I was questioning things when I did die. And if I was to say what I would have expected to see Jesus, I would have think that he would have been like the same size as any person. You know, like you would think in your mind, you know, logic tells you he would have been like the same size as us, but he was not. He was massive and stunning in his beauty, in that he was almost like, I can only describe it as like a hologram, because because like you could see through him, and yet he radiated light and he radiated color. And that and he also like most of, like while I was up there was like more like feelings, you know, that I was having. Everything was like extreme feelings of love and acceptance and forgiveness, and you know, it was just this incredible feeling of like opposite. And when you're there, you forget about what earth is and what happens here. You just feel like good, you know, so the best you'll ever feel, because it's part of you. That light just soaks into you. Every aspect of your existence is part of you. And like I said, it's hard for me to describe this, because there's nothing here on earth that is that. There's nothing that we'll ever do. And at my age, I mean, I'm 63 years old. Nothing other than giving birth, like that incredible thing of having a child, nothing will ever compare to this what happened to me. So at some point I did become aware that there's the Akashic records, but that's not like what I was told that they were. I don't remember. I just knew that they existed. That everything that you ever want to know is stored up there. That if you want to know things, you can find those things out. Let's see. So, like I said, I felt really good, and I didn't want to go back. I was like, you know, when you die, you leave all your pain, all your mental suffering, and everything is you're like in this space of like, I don't want to leave. But I was asked, I had to go before a group of people at like a table, what we think was like a half circle table, and they were there, and I was in the center of it, and they said, do you do you want to stay here? And I said, yes, absolutely, I do want to stay, you know? And then they said to me, do you have any reason why you would want to, go back to your life? And I immediately just, I don't know whether they showed me or, or, or whether I thought of my parents, but either way, I could see them. And at that point, it was the first time I ever saw things from their perspective. It was like, almost like as I was given how much, they, as messed up as my dad was and my, their relationship was, I felt how much they loved me and how much, how devastated they would be to lose another child. And I said, I have to go back, I can't stay, I have to go back for them, And so when I said that, that's when everything went into reverse. And so it was like somebody hit a button and hit the rewind, you're going back. And I went through the tunnel, and while I was going through the tunnel, I had the sense that there's other realms, in between earth and heaven, and that some of them are just not like where you want to be, put it that way. And it happened so fast. And so when I did come back, I was laying on my bed, and it felt like somebody just took a bolt of electricity and just hit me right in the heart and blasted me right out to my fingertips, to my toes, to the end of my hair. And I was just like, what? When I just sat up and I was like, what? And I was just so alive. Like it was like being reborn with the amount of energy. And I was just like, wow. And I'm just like looking around the room, and I'm just like blown away that this had just all happened. It was just like mind bending. And I'm just like, wow. I immediately just jumped out of the bed. And I'm just, at that point, I had this deep sense that the deepest understanding that I had been in the presence of such good that I had like this feeling of like that there is bad. And I think it was just like you're in such a good space that you realize that I felt like anything, out there just seemed so opposite to what I had experienced. So I jumped, and I was scared, and I just like flipped on the light. And when I did, the light, was up above me. It was an old building, and the light just exploded. And I was like, oh. So I ran into the hall, and I flipped on that light, and it exploded again. And I'm like, what is going on? I thought that in my mind, I'm thinking it's the devil's after me. I ran to the end of the hall, the bathroom, and I just went in a bit there and flipped that light on. It exploded. So I'm like, oh, I said, dear God, I said, please just let, there's like two lights, like, like fake candle shapes on either side of the medicine cabinet. What I don't remember is I think that this is where there was like a pull chain that turned it on. I said, God, just let one of them be on, please. I pulled the chain, and that one exploded, but this one was just like flickering. And I said, oh. So I ran into the living room, flipped that light on, same thing, boom. Ran into the kitchen, flipped that one. And I'm like, this is like, I was terrified. I was like, I was just like, why is this happening? So I thought, well, the refrigerator, there's a light in there. Pull the refrigerator up, and the thing just shook and died. And I'm like, this is just too weird, So, I mean, I just went back to bed, and I know I was scared, because I didn't understand why all this weird stuff was going on. And so then, I woke up and I had to go to school if I did sleep. I don't think I did go back to sleep, because like I said, I felt like a newborn baby. Like every cell in my body was like rejuvenated with life, it was like somebody flipped on this switch. So I got dressed and I went to school, and on the way in the hall, the lights are just like blowing out as I'm going down the hall. And I'm like, I'm thinking, there's a devil's after me. So I get to the elevator and punch that, and and I could hear it, like it was stopped on the floor somewhere. I was like, what, so I just went down the steps, and this business with lights going out where I went was going on, like avoiding, lights after for a long time after that. And after my near-death experience, some of the things that I noticed was that I knew that I understood things that I used to not. Like when I was in the private school I went to, everybody was much smarter than me because they were children of doctors, lawyers, and, you know, nuclear physicists, whatever you take it. They were all like really children of smart people. And they all seemed to understand the classes and certain things. And one of the classes, I said, God, can you just please, at that point, I was like, can you please help me understand the stuff that everybody stuff understand? And after my near-death experience, I had taken a class that I had done really poorly in high school, and I did really well in. So I know that it helped me in understanding things. I used to be bad at directions, and then after the near-death experience, I was better at, you know, understanding spatial and directions and things like that. And it seemed as if my IQ had gone up. I'm not that like genius levels or anything, but I was always psychic as a kid, but it seemed to give me different types of psychic abilities. And so I have experiences with angels, and they're kind of strange. And one of them was when Derek was born, and then another one involved driving on the road from 611 coming up from Willow Grove, and that one was one of the weirder ones. And I'll tell you what it was. As I was driving up 611, am I out of time? Is anybody keeping?
Just a couple minutes.
I have minutes.
Yeah, a couple minutes, yeah.
Okay, so I was driving up 611, and Derek wasn't with me. I don't know. I don't even remember how long ago this is. I'm driving along, and there's a light, you know, so many feet ahead of me, and all of a sudden I see these perfect round blue balls, just like I had seen over those doorways, which I had since started reading a lot about angels and what they look like, and I came to realize that that's what they were. They're angels in the form of light. And I'm driving along, and these things come whizzing in, and one's on this car. My hands are on the steering wheel. One's like floating there, and it's like one's there. And then one was like right where the gas pedal would be. And I'm like, oh my gosh, something bad's gonna happen. So I slammed on the brake, and the balls are still there, and all of a sudden this car comes whipping through the light. Like I had the green.
Wow.
But they were trying to save me. That thing just went flying. So that was one of the incidents where I actually saw them that close up. And the other time was when Derek was born, and I was running out of breath, and I had a short birth compared to most people. It happened from the start of the contractions to the time that he was born was about 6 hours. But the beginning of it, I was out of breath, and I felt like I couldn't go on. I was hyperventilating. I was just exhausted, and I couldn't breathe. And I said, God, send me an angel. Just send me an angel. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I felt like I was dying. All the nurses were gone. There was nobody in there. I was all by myself, and I was freaking out. And all of a sudden, this guy comes in, and he's dressed just like a doctor, and he says, I'm so and so, and he shakes my hand. And I swear, like whatever just him touching me was just like it changed everything. It was like it flipped everything, and I was just like all of a sudden I felt good again, and I was just like, it's amazing. And he's just really nice, and he was talking to me, and all of a sudden I'm breathing again, and I'm breathing normally, and I felt like I could go on, and I just thought it was really weird. And so at some point the nurses returned, and I said to them, who was that doctor? He said he was a doctor on call, and they said there's no doctor on call. He wasn't. That wasn't. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, but yeah, there's some guy came in, and he visited me, and they're like, you're wrong. This didn't happen. So later, like after that happened, I started really reading books about angels and reading about near-death experiences to try to, see if other people's experiences, how they lined up with my own. And what I came to learn was there was one quality about that doctor that was kind of strange, is he seemed to radiate neither male nor female. He didn't seem to have, even though he presented as a man, he didn't seem to have anything. He radiated, you get in the presence of somebody, and there was almost like a non-gender at all. It was like he had no gender at all. And the way that he made me feel was just like so dramatically different from the way that I was feeling. I knew that he had to do with that change. And so I realized that he was probably an angel who just took a human form and came in and helped me out. Because, and the other thing I found is in reading about angels is they say, if you ask and you mean it and you need it, they will come. And that's what happened. So there's another time when I was supposed to pick up Derek at school and there's nothing wrong with my car, and I parked, and he was taking forever to come out. And then when he did, the car wouldn't start. I tried to start it and it's just dead. I'm just like, how is this even possible? So he went and got the janitor, and the janitor jumped my car. And then we left to school, CB West, and when we drove down and we got on the highway, there's cops everywhere, and there was, you could tell that a guy had one of those, a back thing hitched to his vehicle, and it had come uncoupled. He must have not put the chains. You're supposed to have like 3 chains, and it must have come undone, and it must have happened right when I was supposed to. If I would have left when I was supposed to leave, I would have possibly been hit by the trailer. So those are the times that I can think of when I had these experiences with angels. I also feel that I have, that God occasionally speaks to me, and I'll wrap this up by saying, one of the conversations I had with him is, I said, God, I was feeling really useless, and I was feeling like I didn't know what to do with myself. And I said, you know, I wanted to figure out a job that I could do that would help people. And I said, what do you want me to do? And usually when I talk, it's usually him coming to me and not me going to him. But he came to me and he said, you can do nothing at all. And I'm like, wait, what? I must be imagining this. And I said, why? Why do you say that? And I was pretty sure it was him. And he said, because you have told one person about me, and that's all you ever needed to do. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then I realized what he meant was that because I had told one person, that's one person can tell another person, and then it can go out exponentially. So that's how I knew that it had to be God, because he surprised me with his answer. You know, that his point was, you know, that's how important it is that you tell people that I exist, you know, that that's what people have to know, you know, that's the most important thing is that. And of course, you know, that, you know, his message is that what he is love. You know, that's what people have to know, that he's not this mean person, you know, who punishes us. Basically, we punish ourselves with what we do, you know. So that's how that is. And we have to just know that there is an afterlife and that God exists. And as far as, you know, me seeing Christ, I know there's a lot of people who don't believe he exists. And that I think a lot of people were raised in Christian homes where they were treated not in a Christ-like way, and so they throw the baby out of the bathwater. They don't want any part of it. So if you say Jesus, people are like flipped off, and you know, they don't want to hear it. But you know, from what I experienced, there's things that I never would have expected, you know, and that Jesus is just as much as love, and that was always his message of love. It's just it's what we have to do, and it is hard to do. It's being human is hard. We're put in situations where, you know, it's difficult to be loving, but we have to fight for, stay on that course of being empathetic and loving.